It's like they didn't want people to know that we existed. Every time a police car went by, my stepdad was like, duck. I remember people in the grocery store just like, what in the world? You know, I remember this one time particularly, this lady was by the produce and she was like, we'll never miss an opportunity to help because that might be the last time that that child is seen alive. So the community that I went to was one of the strictest in the United States. They went on this campaign that I had to learn how to read. I had to learn my ABC, you know, all of this stuff because they were afraid of CPS, obviously. I was beaten into learning how to read. You know, if I read a word wrong, I was beaten on the head. I remember the headaches. Yeah, when I was 22 and had left the Amish, I had approximately a second or third grade education. Freedom of religion trumps every single child safety measure in the United States. And you can go start a cult, you can take the kids there, you can pretend to homeschool them or not, really. And what are the chances that anybody's going to find out or care, or even if they do anything about it? We could really make this into a movement if we really tried.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening, join us over on YouTube at Cults to Consciousness, where you can join in on the conversation. We need people to interact with this post as much as possible. We are trying to get this viewed by as many people as possible so we can reach our goal, which is... Today's episode, we are focusing on building safety for children across every single religion, belief, or background. We are joined in studio by Misty Griffin. Hey. We're having her back. She was raised in a very secluded atmosphere up on a mountain somewhere. We're going to talk all about the details of that. And then pushed into the Amish when she was a teenager. She's written a book, Tears of the Silenced. Highly recommend. We did a whole episode on her backstory. But today, our focus is really on passing this Child Rights Act, which will provide safety for all children across the United States. So Misty, thank you for joining us. Let's talk about your goal with this bill. Is it a bill?
It's a petition right now, but I hope it will become a bill. It's the Child Rights Act. Everybody, please share this video. We want this video to go viral. We want it to get as many shares, as many views as possible, so we can get as many signatures as we possibly can on this Child Rights Act petition. So if you want to help, I mean, if you believe in child safety and that the parent's background, their beliefs, whatever the parents believe, that the child should have a right to safety, then you can do three things. You can share this video, you can go to the link below, description below, and you can click on the link to it, sign, and then you can scroll down to the bottom, the very bottom of the petition, and there's a link to my Facebook, Twitter, or X account, and you can click on that and share my pinned post, make Congress take notice, and just have really people say, it's 2024, it is time for child safety. So
yeah, let's talk about your goal with the Child Rights Act. So what is it that you're actually asking Congress to do here?
One of the main goals of the Child Rights Act petition is to make child sexual abuse prevention education mandatory for every single child in the United States. Right now we have Aaron's Law, which is child sexual abuse prevention education. But if you're in a religious community, it's never going to, reach you if, a kid in that kind of atmosphere. In public schools, parents have the right to opt out. Some states are barely even recognizing it, even if it's been passed in that state. So my goal is to make it federal law, mandatory in all 50 states, and every single child will get this education. Secondly, in the petition, I'm asking that every child have a mandated reporter in their orbit. So if they are being homeschooled, then their homeschooling parent or person who's homeschooling them will have to take mandated reporter training and will be held accountable to report, that abuse. So if there's abuse going on and they know it and they don't report it, then they're going to be held accountable for that.
And the reason for that is because in public schools, teachers are mandated reporters in some states. With the homeschool kids, parents can isolate their children and no one has to report any abuse.
Yes. So teachers, principals, people that work in the licensed professionals that work in public schools, they are mandated reporters. If they know abuse is going on and they don't report it, then they can get in trouble. I mean, they can face jail time, whatever it is for that state. But, if you're being homeschooled, the homeschool laws are so lax. I mean, there are some states, I think there's 15 states in the United States that have pretty much no homeschool laws. You can just say, oh, my kids are being homeschooled. And I mean, nobody really checks. Nobody does anything. A lot of states, you have to send some stuff in. But I've heard of cases where the parents, did the stuff that they sent in for the kids. Homeschooled kids are at a big risk. Not saying that a lot of homeschool parents don't do it right and, aren't great parents. I have a lot of homeschooling friends, but everybody should realize the potential, the danger, the potential for harm there is great. So it is important that, we have some sort of built-in system where, if you're going to homeschool your kids, then you have to take this mandated reporter training. And if it ever comes out that these kids were being abused and that you knew about it, then you will face criminal charges. You will be held liable for that. Because it's not okay. If you want to abuse your kids, the best thing you can do is just pull them out of school and say you're homeschooling them. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
I could have disappeared. I could have died and nobody would have known. And it's happening to kids all over the United States. So that's the main two things that it's asking for. Also, religious school teachers that are not licensed, I'm calling for them to also be mandated reporters and held liable to report child abuse. Everybody thinks, oh, school teachers are mandated reporters, but mandated reporting is usually connected to a license, a professional license. If you are a professional and you are licensed, you are like a psychologist, a nurse, a doctor, a teacher, then you are a mandated reporter. And, you can get in some pretty good trouble if you do not report child abuse that you knew about. But a lot of religious schools, say, where I come from, Amish, Mennonite, German Baptist, a lot of fundamental schools, they have their own teachers that are not licensed. Scientology, a lot of those teachers are not licensed either. And they can get away without reporting child abuse. Even if they knew about it, they're not licensed. So they're not going to be held accountable if they knew about abuse and didn't report it. Mandated reporting is so important because they are able to spot the signs and they are motivated to report abuse that they know about because they're like, I don't want to be held accountable for this, for not reporting this. This is going to come back on me, so I'm going to report this. Mm-hmm. And, it's just really important. There are still 3 states in the United States that do not have mandated reporting laws. Mm. So that also needs to be fixed.
So for people who are thinking, oh, Misty, it's not that big of an issue. This is the United States. Like, everyone's free and, things are fine. And yeah, child abuse happens, but it's not as bad as you're saying. Let's get into your story and why you're so passionate about this, just to deeply illustrate how big of an issue it is and how dangerous it can be. So let's talk about your childhood.
Yes. So my story is a perfect example of this, but it's, at one time I thought my story was unique, but then I realized it's not. It is. So many people can't identify with my story, and that is just horrifying. I guess I start from the beginning when I was about 4 years old. That's where my, memory starts, really. I was almost 4 years old, and my mom was, I guess she would have been 20, 21. She was quite young. She had 3 children by the age of 19 with her stepfather. So her stepfather is my dad. And then she met the man who would become my stepfather. And he was 48 years old. He was a gold miner in Arizona, northern Arizona. And I would later learn that he was a pedophile who had been on the run for over 20 years. When he was, I think, 29, he was wanted in the Seattle area for molesting a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old neighbor girls. Mm. And to escape arrest, he fled that area. This would have been like the 1960s, late 1960s, somewhere around there. And he ran to Alaska. And he worked on the smelt and herring boats for a few years. There was a warrant out for his arrest, but, how would they track him down back then in Alaska? So from there, he went down to Arizona, and I later found out for about 10 years he was a manager in an apartment building in the Phoenix area. From there, he became a gold miner in northern Arizona, very isolated. And that's when my mom met him. He was already by that time 47 or 48 years old, and he had a few gold mines in Arizona. It wasn't a very populated area. It was outside of Prescott Valley, Mayor, Arizona area. And this would have been 1986, the year I turned 4. So my mom was 21 at that time. And she didn't tell my dad that she had children. She had 3 children. And she just sort of shacked up with my stepfather in his 13-foot trailer on a gold mine outside of Prescott. I guess about after 6 months, he was going through her mail and he found custody papers. And he realized that she had 2 girls, ages 3 and 1.5. And he pestered her pretty much until she came and got us. We were living with our dad. And so they came down, they picked us up, they took us from my dad, who wasn't a great man, but he was my dad. So I remember him being nice to me. And I was in for a rude awakening. He had this yellow Jeep, and my stepdad, he threw us in the Jeep and we took off. This was in Tucson, and we went to northern Arizona by Prescott. And on the way there, I remember sitting in the back holding my 1.5-year-old sister who was bawling. My stepdad was laying out the rules. He's like, if we tell you to do something, you're going to do it immediately. And you're not going to be a problem for adults, and you're going to be seen and not heard. I remember sitting back there listening to all of these rules for, I think the drive was like 2.5 hours or something. So that's how our life started. We went to this 13-foot trailer. I had a little bunk bed up at the top, the dinner table folded down into a bed, and that's where they slept. And we lived in that trailer for 2 years. Yeah, that's where the nightmare began. It was just completely isolated. I think it was like a half a mile off of the main pavement. I later learned that some mining friends of my stepdad, they were actually walking up in the mountains. And I guess they let us run around naked around this trailer. And they saw bruises on us while we were running around naked. And they actually reported them. I later learned this from, when my mom was talking and upset and stuff about the state. Like when I was a teenager, I learned about this. And they actually reported them for child abuse. And that's why we left the mine and we went back to Seattle area. So we started traveling, like we were moving all the time. We were traveling from Arizona to the Seattle area, Seattle in the summer, Arizona in the winter, and we were always moving because there were some people that were suspicious, like my grandmother. She also reported them. I learned that from my brother later, but it was easy to evade. You just move around, and even if CPS gets a phone call and they can't find you, it's unlikely that they're gonna put too much effort into it and track you down.
Mm-hmm.
So,
can we talk about the extent to which you were isolated? Because I think that was the most shocking thing for me while reading your book was you weren't even really allowed into society at all. You would have to stay in the car, or if you were allowed into society, it's because you were working, making them money, and it seemed like you were basically just trafficked for work and abused at the same time.
Yeah, so when we lived on the mine at 4 years old, I have these memories of being with my dad. My memory started really young. And, going to the swimming pool in the summer, I remember that summer we played a lot at the swimming pool, and I had I think 1 or 2 aunts that I remembered. We used to go to their house and, just always being around people. Like we were always out doing something, it seemed like. And my dad was a truck driver, so we had to stay with my grandma or stay with an aunt or be with my dad when he was home, or just always doing stuff. And then when we went to live with my stepdad, it was like, oh my goodness, he was wanted for child molestation. So he started hiding us. He was very anti-government at that time, because he was wanted by the police. So he had this idea that, women were men's property, and the government was out to get us. And, we just had to stay, off the grid and out of society, and, all of these things he was always ranting about. So when we went to live at the mine, we were rarely seen by anybody. Like my grandmother, she would come and hunt us down. Like she was like, where is it? Oh, we turn here and go. I learned from my brother, who was adopted by my grandmother. my older brother, that they used to like hunt us down in the desert, trying to find us. And she would be like, you need to put these kids in school. What are these kids doing? And yeah, living with my stepdad, we were at the mine. If he had to go to like a mining, something for mining, we had to stand behind them. We were not ever allowed to talk unless we raised our hand. Even if people talked to us, we had to wait until they nodded and then we could talk. If we wanted to talk to them, my mom and my stepdad, we had to raise our hands. So we were never allowed to talk without permission. And if we did, we were beaten within an inch of our life. And it happened several times because me and my sister, we would, talk to each other. I can't believe my little sister learned how to talk even. I would talk to her when I wasn't supposed to. And then when they would like go into the store, go into town, we would call it, go to the store, we had this truck with a canopy on it. And me and my sister would almost always have to stay in the back of this truck. And, in Prescott area, in the winter, it's freezing. And in the summer, it is hot. Like, I remember one Christmas in Prescott in the 80s where it was 100 degrees. I remember that vividly. I was like 5 years old. So we would stay in this canopy. Sometimes we were allowed to open the fiberglass window, but most of the time they would keep the fiberglass window closed. It's ridiculous. And my stepdad would put a tape recorder. He always had a tape recorder next to us. Like when he would leave us somewhere, there was always this, old 1980s tape recorder. I forget what make it was. You would push the buttons at the top to start it. You could hear it like, like going. And he would put it. He's like, if you touch this, if you make a sound, if you make this stop, I will know. And he did. He used to take it home and carry it around and listen to it. He said, you be quiet and take a nap. And sometimes, it was 100 over. I don't know. It had to have been over 100 degrees in there sometimes.
And you're locked in there?
And it seemed, I don't know. I was a little kid. Yeah, we were locked. He would close the back and then there was a lock with a key. We were locked in there. And most of the time.
So this was like a shell on a truck.
Yeah, it was one of those old yellow, I still remember, yellow Ford trucks. And then it had like a yellow and white canopy on it, like a fiberglass canopy. You see them on the street. Sometimes it looks so old. And then it had like a window on each side of fiberglass. It was fiberglass. So you could see movement in there, but you couldn't really see in there. And it had like two little screen windows on each side. And most of the times those were closed. Sometimes they were open. If it was really hot, they would do us the favor and open it.
Wow.
And sometimes it would like peek. I remember peeking out, looking out. Yeah, most of the time it was closed. And they would go to the store probably 2 or 3 times a week. And I don't know, they would do more stuff because they would be gone for hours sometimes. And it's not just because I was a little kid. It was like, this is taking forever. We would be there a long time. And they would come back with like hamburgers, like a hamburger, like McDonald's, and like throw us each a hamburger or something. So it was a long time. And we would be back there in this truck and we'd be, I'd be going, shh, to my sister. I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go, shh. And we usually had hay in there, so I would let her pee in the hay.
Oh my gosh, they treating you like animals.
Yeah, it was terrible, but we were supposed to hold it. I couldn't tell them that. And sometimes we had like a can back there that, they didn't know was back there. And we would use that and then dump it in behind, under the hay, and eventually it would dry. But yeah, I remember my sister just like, I have to pee. And, if she wet her pants, she would get severely beaten. So I learned to hold it for a long time, but she was like 2-3 years old. She couldn't. She was a baby. And yeah, they wouldn't leave us any water, nothing. I remember sometimes, this one time in particular, I think was 5 years old, and it was so hot. I have no idea how hot it was. Summer. And he would usually park under a tree. There was like a tree in this parking lot where the store was, but it was hot. It was hot, especially if the windows are cold. There's no fan. There's nothing back there. And I remember this one time in particular that he opened the canopy and said, okay, girls, come out. And we couldn't stand up. Like he pulled us, he was always yanking us by our arms, and he pulled us out and we just collapsed on the pavement.
Oh my gosh.
We were close to dying, I think, at that time. They'd been gone a long time and it was so hot and we were just, and I remember we were like, and I was trying to I was using my dress and like waving my sister's face, and she was like just laying there. It's so ridiculous. Like, what were they going to do with 2 dead little girls? Jeez. That still had people sort of like, looking for them, like my grandmother. She was still keeping tabs on us, every 6 months or so. It's just the recklessness of that is just shocking. But that's the lengths that they went to keep us hidden. Like, it's like they didn't want people to know that we existed. Every time a police car went by, my stepdad was like, duck. Police are bad. Never, if you go up to a policeman and you say anything to them, they're going to put you in foster homes. You're going to be raped every night in your bed in a foster home.
Oh,
and
my
they just
gosh.
scared us to death about the police. So we would never, even dream of getting one's attention. So, yeah, that's how it started. We were isolated. And I remember we started going to this church for a few months, this Calvary Chapel Church in Prescott Valley. I don't know why we started going there, but we went for maybe a few months to a year. But me and my sister were not allowed to go to Sunday school. They had this big Sunday school. It was a big church, a pretty big church. And there was lots of kids. Remember, every time the minister would say, let the kids out to go to Sunday school, they were so excited and running and happy. And then we had to sit there in between my mom and stepdad. And I remember people like looking at us odd. Why are these two little girls not going to Sunday school? And my stepdad would say, well, we don't want them to be influenced by worldly things. To think back how many opportunities there were for people to pay attention and think, what is going on here? We did get weird looks. So maybe when I was about 6 years old, we started being allowed to go into the grocery store more. I think they were afraid that we would no longer be quiet. Maybe we would make too much noise. But they started sometimes letting us go into the grocery store. And my sister, she was a little bit more hyperactive than me and always getting in, seemed like every 15 minutes she was in trouble. But my stepdad, he used to make her carry this big black belt in the grocery store. She used to play with it, try to pretend it was her belt because she was so embarrassed. But she was about 4 years old. And she had to carry this belt. And sometimes she just got tired, so she would just carry it like this, fold it up, how it's used for spanking. And I remember people in the grocery store just like, what in the world? I remember this one time particularly, this lady was by the produce and she was like, she was like looking at us, I think trying to get me and my sister's attention. And we knew not to look at her. But, I just wonder how many people saw us like that. These two little girls and these, we always wore the worst possible clothes, just from the thrift store and, carrying this belt and obviously looking petrified, not talking, raising our hands sometime to talk in the store. How many people saw us? That's what I just, never miss an opportunity to help a child. If you see something that's just like really, oh my goodness, what is this? Never miss an opportunity to help because that might be the last time that child is seen alive. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all of that. I can't even imagine. And that's just the beginning of your story. Do you think it's good to talk about the lack of education before we move to the Amish side?
Yeah. During this time when I got to be, I think it was 7. Like I said, my grandma kept pestering until I was 9 years old. My grandma kept pestering around. She knew what her daughter was. My grandma was a monster, but her daughter was, I don't know what's worse than a monster. My grandma was very, very abusive, and she had abused my mom. But she still had some sense of humanity, I guess. Some, like the kids should be in school, they should be out in public, they should be doing things that kids should be doing. She still had that sense, and she just could not believe how far my mom was taking this, So she kept pestering around. So when I was about, I think it was 7 years old, I was enrolled in school for probably, I don't know, a couple months. But I remember every time I went to school, I don't know why, but I would go to sleep at my desk. I would go to school, I would sit down, and like, I don't know, half an hour later, the teacher would be like, Misty, wake up. Misty, come on, you got to do your schoolwork. And when I would go home, my stepdad wouldn't allow me to do any homework at all. He's like, no, that's what school's for. That's what we are, taxpayers are paying for. You do the schoolwork in the school, and you do not come home with anything. So, it wasn't long until the teacher, I still remember my teacher. She had this like giant perm. It was the 80s, and she was young, and she was so nice. And, it wasn't long until she had a meeting with them. I don't know what she said in the meeting, but, I was always falling asleep. Every time we had story time, she would have me sit next to her and she would hug me and I would fall asleep. I mean, that's one thing you notice about severely abused children is when they are in a safe environment, they will fall. I've heard that from teachers. Yeah. Like if we have kids and they're falling asleep in school, we become suspicious. I've had teachers write me and tell me that. And that's what I did. And of course, I was falling behind. I wasn't keeping up. I didn't know anything pretty much at that time. And I didn't know how to do schoolwork. And yeah, so she had this meeting with them. I don't know what she said, but that afternoon we moved. We were living in a trailer park above the school. It was in Humboldt, Arizona. And that afternoon we pulled up stakes and we went out into the desert. In Phoenix, we used to go camping. We had a travel trailer. So we used to go to the Phoenix area and go drive way out into the sand desert and camp. And that's what we did. So I'm guessing they were afraid she was going to call, CPS. And she was a teacher. So it would have held a little bit of weight then. So they pulled me out of school. That's pretty much when we really started going off the grid. Like we started getting rid of electronics and, my stepdad really became in earnest. We have to start dressing, Christian, what he said, reading the Bible. And we started dressing in these long dresses and wearing scarves on our heads and really pulling even more away from society after that. They became really strict that I had to learn how to read. So they went on this 3-week campaign to teach me how to read. And, if I didn't read fast enough, I was beaten on the head with the book. So, I learned how to read very fast. And they actually did me a gigantic favor with that because, I became naturally very good at, not very good, but competent, I guess, in reading and writing. And, that really helped me in my future. But wow, they went on this campaign that I had to learn how to read. I had to learn my ABC, all of this stuff because they were afraid of CPS, obviously. So yeah, I was beaten into learning how to read. If I read a word wrong, I was beaten on the head. I remember the headaches. I was just beaten on the head with the book. And I think by the time I was 8, I was reading at like a 5th grade level. I was just reading just adult books. I really, picked up reading. But
wow, 0 to 100 overnight, basically.
Yeah.
But then even within the homeschooling, I think you had said they enrolled you in some sort of homeschooling program because the state required something, but then there were still workarounds and ways around it.
Yeah, so what they did is we were at the age that we were supposed to be in school. So my mom was getting government money. She was getting money for me, my sister herself. She was saying our stepdad was her landlord. So she was a single mom with these 2 kids. And she was getting all this government money. She was getting SSI disability. She was going in, she used to rehearse how she would act crazy so they would believe her and she would get disability. So she was getting this money. She gave the government always a fake address. But if anything got really serious and they had to see us or something, they had to show that we were doing some kind of schoolwork or they were going to get in trouble. So they ordered these homeschooling curriculum from this Mennonite publishing group in Crockett, Kentucky, Rod and Staff. So they would have us sporadically do a lesson out of, these books, math, reading, writing. It wasn't structured. Like they didn't sit us down every day, Monday through Friday, and say you do this lesson, that lesson. It was just sporadic. Like sometimes it was once a month. Once a month we had to do 10 pages of math or something, just so she could show that we were doing something. We both picked up reading really fast, so we would read the instructions. We didn't know that we had to show our work for math, really. We didn't really get that much of it, so we would just copy the problem, and then we would look in the teacher's manual. Her teacher's manual was right there. We just get the answers. Or sometimes they were in the back of the book, and we would just write we get 100% on everything because we just write down the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was 22 and had left the Amish, I had approximately a second or third grade education, maybe.
Oh my gosh. Right. So then you were forced into the Amish at 17 and you had to learn the language and the standards and the dress because you were your stepdad was making you culturally Amish, but you didn't really know any of the rules and you're thrown into this environment. So let's just briefly talk about how people misunderstand the Amish as far as, I don't want to say a blanket statement, but there's so many patterns of abuse and manipulation within the Amish communities, and so many kids are left behind because of that. So just from your perspective and the Amish community that you were a part of, let's talk about how this bill could have helped protect you and others in there.
Yeah, so when I was 18, I was taken to an Amish community. It was our way out. Like, I was trying to escape the ranch that we'd been held on for like 7 years. We were isolated up on this ranch, and I was trying to escape. And my stepdad was like, "We're taking you to this Amish community, you and your sister." They thought that's going to be a way to continue to isolate us and make sure that we don't go to the police. They knew the laws a lot better than we did, and they knew that they could get in trouble. So I was taken to this Amish community, and I was like, yay, freedom. And it did. The entire time I was there, it did seem like freedom compared to what I had. I was being held captive, a prisoner, a slave. So going to the Amish community, I was like, yay. And then it's like, wow, so many rules. If you don't follow every little tiny detail, the deacon shows up on your doorstep. I mean, you have to keep in line, especially if you're baptized. And if you're a teenager that wants to be baptized, you have to, stay in line. So they have all of these things to keep you in line and keep you towing the line, and ways to humiliate you if you don't. If you don't wear your dress like this, you're going to be brought up in front of the church and have to confess. So, they really keep you in line. So the community that I went to was one of the strictest in the United States. It was one of the strictest ordnungs, or branches, whatever you want to call it. We call it ordnung in the Amish. So I learned, I had to learn Pennsylvania Dutch. I had to learn how to read German. And yeah, I just had to learn all of these rules. And, the yay feeling wore off really fast. And I was like, I'm isolated again. Everybody has this idea of the Amish, this community working together, doing barn raisings and all of this stuff. And it's a very isolating lifestyle. You have church every 2 weeks. And, for those 2 weeks, you are really just in your family setting. You're on your family farm. You don't have a whole lot of interaction with, other families. Maybe your aunt or your uncle lives over there and they come over to help, or you go to help them. But it's a very isolating lifestyle. That's probably where this idea was born, where it just really, I started realizing in my mind, I was raised by two psychos pretty much in an isolated atmosphere. And then I go to this Amish community and I start realizing, my story isn't that terribly unique. I mean, these kids are isolated. They have no way to get help. They're just isolated into this church setting. And especially in these very strict Amish groups, they have no access to the outside world. The kids used to get to go to town maybe once a year if they were lucky. Oh, this year it's not your turn. Next year's your turn. So they were just really in this community. And then I started learning, the community's rules. We are the Amish. This is your life. We are your people. Those are the outsiders. You don't talk to the outsiders about what goes on in this church. We handle things ourselves. The bishop of my church, a few weeks before I got to the community, he was actually shunned for molesting his daughter, his 4-year-old daughter, for 6 weeks. I didn't know it, of course, at the time, but I later found out. And, when I got there, he's the bishop. He's telling me what I have to do and telling my stepdad, and he's an authority. Nothing happened to him. He just got to stay home for 6 weeks. And, that's what I gradually learned. It started out with this girl in the church. She was 14, and she was molested by a man who lived on the property, who dressed Amish and lived on the property. And the church was like, shh, 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 shh. hush, hush, hush. This man was actually charged with human trafficking. He was a human trafficker, before this. He was wanted by the FBI, and he was living on the minister's property. And he came in one morning when everybody was getting up, and she was still in bed for some reason, and that's when this happened. She was 14, and everybody said, "Oh, it was her fault. She was so friendly. She was talking to him. She was smiling at him. What do you expect?" That's the first thing that I learned about. And this girl, she always wore a bigger head covering than anybody else. She always wore a bigger dress, and she knew that she was being blamed for this and looked down on. And, her chances of getting married were really slim at that point. I mean, it was her fault. Of course, it was her fault. That's when I started, I probably learned about that maybe 6 months after I went to the Amish community. And that's when I really got this oh no, what am I doing? Where am I? This isn't what I had thought. I knew before then that some things weren't quite right, but it was so drilled into my head that I had to be Amish or I would go to hell. I couldn't even be Mennonite. I mean, the Mennonites hadn't been given the true gospel, and that's why they were allowed to wear flowers on their dresses. But it's in the Bible that you have to wear a solid colored dress. That's what I was told. And I had actually read the Bible, and I'd never found it. And my stepdad read the New Testament to us every morning for years, and he had never come across it. But I still believed it. I still believed I had to wear a solid colored dress. I had to wear a head covering, and I had to be Amish. Once you know you have to be Amish and you leave, you are going to hell. No questions asked. I said, Jesus wasn't Amish. I mean, it's just some things in my mind. It's wait a minute. I still do like to think, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right. But I still believe it. Regardless of all the contradictions, I firmly believed it. Once I learned about the 14-year-old girl, I started learning about other cases. And it was something doesn't mesh quite, something doesn't quite mesh here. The girls, they're supposed to be chaste. You're supposed to be a virgin when you get married, all of these things. And then the men are running around making sure you're not. So what is going on here? And then the only way that they could explain it is it's the girl's fault. I mean, even if she's 4 years old, like the bishop, when he was arrested and, giving a statement to the police, it was well, she would never keep her dress down. A 4-year-old girl. It's we always had a terrible time, girls, keep your dresses down. And they would never keep their, sometimes they would pull them over their head. I read part of the statement. And I'm but she's 4. And you're an adult. Why are you attracted to a 4-year-old girl in the first place? Who cares if she's running around naked? I mean, what's the big deal? But it was always the girl's, the baby's fault, the child's fault.
Gosh.
It's always, you are born into sin. I mean, that's the idea. You are born into sin, and, that's with you from day one. And, if you're not taught properly, you're just going to go out there and, attract all of this attention and, make the men stumble. And, why is it that they always think the unmarried girls want a married man? I mean, why is that?
Yeah, there's so many patterns of abuse, and we've interviewed a lot of people who are former Amish and former Mennonite, and it just seems so unfortunately common, the sexual abuse. And I mean, we could get into that, and we have, but I think a huge part of your story is when it finally happened to you from the bishop and you did go to the police. You were okay, I need help. I don't care if I go to hell. The police wouldn't help you because they're oh, well, religious freedom, the Amish take care of the Amish things. And so I think that's why what you're doing is so important with what you're trying to get past, because it's going to supersede that in a way that keeps children safe. And I guess it's so frustrating when people say, well, religious freedom, and why does your religion think it's okay to hurt children? You know what I mean? I don't feel like we're imposing anything on people on their religious beliefs if we just say, don't hurt the kids, please. And so it's frustrating that this isn't getting more traction. And that's why we wanted to do this, because it seems so obvious, keep the children safe. But we're getting pushback as far as, well, religious freedom. So what do you think about all of that?
So the Child Rights Act Hopefully it gets to Congress. Hopefully it gets signed in, like the Civil Rights Act, all of those. It's to protect every single child in the United States. Children in foster care are at huge risk. Children going through the justice system are at enormous risk for abuse. But I'm specifically, it's for every child, but I'm specifically calling out religion because if freedom of religion versus child rights is not addressed, it will continually slip under the radar. Every child should have the right to safety, but if will end up at the Supreme Court if it gets any traction. Freedom of religion should not supersede child safety.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how your religion can justify not teaching children, sexual abuse prevention education. It would be great if every parent did that, but of course they will not. I mean, we've had how many thousands of years for parents to start doing that, and they just don't. I mean, some do, but I mean, not every single child gets this education. Freedom of religion is the one thing that can always, I guess it's get out of jail free card. If you cite, well, it's against my religion, then, I mean, there's a good chance you won't have to do it. Freedom of religion trumps every single child safety measure in the United States. And you can go start a cult, you can take the kids there, you can pretend to homeschool them or not, really. And what are the chances that anybody's going to find out or care, or even if they do anything about it? Very small. I mean, it's very, very small that anything's going to happen. So we need to have this talk, freedom of religion. Are you really, really allowed to say everything? Freedom of religion. Are you allowed to drive down the freeway without a car seat and have your infant on the back, just laying on the back seat? If you get stopped by the police, are you going to be able to say, well, it's against my religion to have a car seat? Or are they going to take the kid away and put you in jail? And, it's child endangerment. So freedom of religion is very selective, but you can get around just about everything with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be called out. It needs to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court needs to do their job and weigh in and say, wait a minute. Okay, yes, you have your freedom of religion, but yes, children, are they safe? Are children safe in this country? No. Child safety is not our number one priority. We are not as progressive as we think. If you can isolate children in a cult and say, we don't believe in calling the police, we are not going to call the police. If you call the police, you're going to get kicked out of the church with the clothes on your back, pretty much. How are kids safe in that kind of environment? Mm-hmm. They're not. So let's go back to after I left the Amish and I started making this documentary, Sins of the Amish. We started hearing from so many people that, they wanted to report it. They wanted to go to the police, but they were told they had pushback from the church. The church was like, no, I mean, we don't do that. That's the unchristian thing to do. The Christian thing is you forgive the abuser, you pray for the abuser. And if you don't forgive them, then you're worse than the abuser. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. I don't know how many times I heard that, the Lord's Prayer. And so you have to forgive. How many times has your brother sinned? What is it? 70 times 70? Forgive him 70 times 70. And this is used in child abuse, physical child abuse, child sexual abuse cases. Yes, he sinned, but he's just a man. Forgive him. He repented to the church. He's still doing it. Yes, we know. Okay, he can repent again. It just goes on and on and on and on. That's why we need the Child Rights Act. We need to make sure that there is a safety net in place for every single child in the United States, regardless if their parents are religious, non-religious, if they are in foster care, if they are in the prison system. Every single child deserves to grow up without being abused. That should just be a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. One argument I heard against this from a lawmaker, I think it was in Ohio, Aaron's Law. This is basically an extension of Aaron's Law, which is already passed in, I think it's 35 states. When Erin Marin was talking, one of these lawmakers said back to Erin Marin, she's like, well, I'm really afraid of children losing their innocence. We're going to be teaching them this sexual abuse prevention education. Our little kids are going to lose their innocence. Parents need a way to opt out of this and, be able to say, no, my kids don't need this. And, Aaron Marin said, yes, parents can have the option to opt out. I mean, what parents do you think are going to opt out? The ones that they know their kids are being abused. But another thing that I was reading this, I was like, according to the CDC, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys will be sexually abused before their 18th birthday.
Yeah.
They are losing their innocence.
Exactly.
Horrifically.
Yeah, I'm getting fired up over here. I'm like, oh.
You're afraid of kids losing their innocence. What about the 1 in 4 girls and the 1 in 13 boys? And that is a very liberal statistic. Like, a lot of people say 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys. Like, there's a foundation called 1 in 6, where it's 1 in 6 boys. They are losing their innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And you would rather, sacrifice the 1 in 3 and 1 in 6 to save the other kids' innocence. How are the kids losing their innocence by being told that they have the right to be safe? I mean, I'm not talking about putting up diagrams and, just explicit pornographic education for a 5-year-old, or it has to be age appropriate.
Yeah.
If this is happening to you, this is the mandated report. You tell a trusted adult at a safe time to do so. I mean, that is the message for the kids. I didn't know that if I reported to anybody, if I snuck away and told somebody, if they would even help me as a kid. Kids need to be told, if you are being abused, you don't have to put up with this. It's not right. It's abuse. And you can tell somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the message we are trying to get out of kids. We are not trying to have them lose their innocence. But, for that lawmaker to say that, and she was a lawmaker, to not think about these statistics, the 1 in 3, the 1 in 6
mm-hmm.
that are losing their innocence. I mean, 1 in 3 girls. If you have a stadium with 1,000 women in it, how many have been abused? I mean, 333.3? I mean, on average. I mean, that is a terrifying statistic.
Yeah, I think it's a website called RAIN. I want to say it's RAIIN.org. If you guys are thinking, well, those are out of proportion, they have statistics on there. They have so much information on child sex abuse and what's actually going on out there. It's really worth taking a look at. And yeah, I was getting fired up as you were saying what she was saying about losing. Okay, well, being sexually abused is losing your innocence. And there's nothing wrong with teaching safe touch at, like you said, age appropriate ways, where you don't have to go into how babies are made, but you can say, if anyone touches you here, let mommy know, or let your teacher know, or let someone know who is safe. A trusted adult. Exactly. And it's just so important. And I'm just sick of the whole abstinence only teachings, as far as like no sex education at all, or just don't do it, don't talk about it, don't even tell them how you get pregnant, like in the Amish is very...
The night before your wedding.
Yeah, because it's just part of our biological nature, and things are going to happen, especially with these young boys. I mean, you were talking to me about the Amish in some communities where the brothers are taking the hinges off of their sisters' doors so they can just do as they please, and that's not okay. The further you repress, the more sexual distortion you're going to get. That's just how it works. It's how I've seen it time and time again in these interviews. It just seems to always correlate with the most sexual abuse happens when you repress and you don't educate and you don't teach consent and boundaries and safe sex. And again, we're not even talking about teaching children about sex. We're talking about safe touch, of course, age appropriate. So I think it's just so important what you're doing, and we appreciate you being the voice for the voiceless, continuing to speak out, writing your book, Tears of the Silenced. Everyone go check it out. We'll link it in the description. It's just so important that people become even just aware of the issue so that they can become part of the solution.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to say is just, people are like, well, it can't possibly be that bad. This is the United States. We have all of these measures in place. And I'd like to just tell people, remember Jonestown. I mean, there are Jonestown all over the United States. They are everywhere. Like on Reddit, there is a recovering from homeschooling group. There are thousands of kids that have been in religious schools, homeschools, that have been so severely abused. I mean, in some cases, my story pales compared to these severely abusive cases. I mean, look at the Turpin children, right here in California, kept in a house, I mean, with neighbors. I mean, child abuse in this country is quite prevalent, and if you think religion makes somebody less likely to be abused, I mean, think again. I mean, religion can go off the rails. I mean, look at Waco. I mean, one of the reasons that they went in there was because of child abuse claims. But how long had the kids been there before? I mean, if you watch the documentary, that the kids were so severely abused in that, what was it, the Davidians cult? I mean, they had to have like in the Duggars, like instant obedience. If they were told to get on the ground, they had to get on the ground immediately because the apocalypse was coming any second. And, if they didn't hit the floor immediately, they were beaten within an inch of their life. I mean, it was just horrific, the child abuse that happened in that group. And they were secluded. They were off over there. Oh, they're good people. Yeah, they have some guns, but they're doing this and that. And they're just good Christian people. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. It was horrible what was going on in there. And yes, I mean, people criticize the ATF, how they went in there, blah, 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 whatever. The bottom line is this was an abusive cult that was abusing, basically it was a maniac that was abusing his followers. He'd gotten his followers to believe him. But the kids in there were so severely abused, and they were being sexually abused, and they had no way out. They really had no way out. And there's kids all over the United States, they have no way out. Like, we know, was it Sugar Creek, Arizona, or Sugar Creek, Colorado, the strict Mormon?
Short
Creek, yeah. People know about this. They know that the kids there are isolated and most likely being abused, and it's happening all over the United States. And what is anybody doing about it? What? Nothing. But they're a religious group, like when I went to the police. Freedom of religion, we have to be careful. Well, I don't know, freedom of religion. I was told so many times, by the police, freedom of religion. And that allowed the bishop to, get away into Canada and, abuse children that hadn't even been born at that time yet. So, we really need to put something in place in this country, put a safety net in place that is going to protect every child. Just give a basic amount of protection, human rights. Just give the children human rights. Give the kids just human rights. You have the right to safety. If you're being abused, you have the right to say something. Here are the people that you can say it to. And we need to enforce it. It needs to be enforced. I'm the consulting producer on Sins of the Amish. I basically put the whole show together. I rounded up all of the former Amish and Mennonites. I worked on this for 3.5 years. And while we were filming, I went to Capitol Hill with one of my friends, and we talked to a member of Congress. And I told this member of Congress this problem. I mean, Congress is aware, even if they don't want to say so. I talked to my member of Congress, and I basically asked her, so what do we do? I was expecting this, smart reply, this is what we do. Oh, wow, okay, let's do it. And she was like, you should contact Department of Justice. Okay. Well, so many people have done that. We've been to the police. What is that going to do? So I realized, I was like, they don't know what to do. And if they do, they don't want to do it. So, members of Congress, they are worried about getting reelected. And, how many districts? Some districts, this idea would be really popular and probably do well, but other districts, it wouldn't. I mean, it would fall flat. That's when I realized I have to think up. I have to give them basically a roadmap of what to do and get people behind it. And this member of Congress told me, she was like, well, pretty much make this into, paraphrasing, make this into a movement and come back. That's what she said. Make this into, get people behind this, get organizations behind this and come back, and maybe somebody will listen to you. But without that, nobody's going to listen to you, unless you're making a lot of noise. I mean, nobody's going to care. So, that's what I went back. I started working on the Child Rights Act petition. When I started with it, it was like 5 pages, detailing out every single thing that was wrong with our justice system and, society in general. But some friends, they helped me narrow it down and get it really succinct and, put measures in there that could really, could actually pass and, make a difference for kids. And when we released Sins of the Amish, that's when I released the petition 2 years ago. It has over 33,000 signatures, just with me like sharing it on Twitter pretty much, and doing the other video with Shalise. But we could really make this into a movement if we really tried. And so many times people want to do something, but they think, oh, it's not going to matter. It's not going to do anything. A lot of people have told me, yes, so you get this, into a movement, it's not going to go anywhere. The freedom of religion is, it's like guns. Freedom of religion and guns. You don't touch those two things. They have like unlimited freedom for those two things. And I'm like, no, if people really join together and start making noise, like a lot of noise. Yes, it's not going to go anywhere if it's just a little rumble. But if it's a lot of noise, it can do something. It can change laws. If a member of Congress is like, the people in your district are, they are really pounding the pavement for this thing, they're going to start listening to me like, I better pay attention to this. I better look good and get out there. And it's sad to say it, but that's how it works. So unless this really, really gets a lot of attention, a lot of momentum, a lot of people talking about it, a lot of people sharing it on social media, it's never going to go anywhere. And that's sad. We're just going to continue in this cycle of kids just, being abused and not knowing what to do and where to go and how to get help. And they'll be talking about this 100 years from now. And
so that's what we're doing. That's why we're here, guys. We want to make that noise. So be sure to share this video, share it with your friends, share it on Facebook, share it on Instagram, share it on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And make sure to go and sign. We want to hit at least 35,000 because then it hits a new level of popularity, I guess, within change.org, and they can start pushing it more. So just right after this video or right now, go to change.org/childrightsact, add your signature, share the petition, share this video, do as much as you can if you believe that child safety is important, and I know you do. So thank you, Misty, for coming on and sharing that, for all the work that you're doing, all the effort you are putting into this. We really appreciate everything you're doing to make sure children can be safe.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Let's really, really, enact change for kids. We can do it. But everybody just has to believe it's possible.
Calling on you, Congress, if you're watching, if you know someone who can forward this to Congress, any congressman, please do so. Let us know if you can help us make any connections. You can email Misty at
mistygriffin@gmail.com.
Perfect. And is there any other social media that you want to share?
Pretty much my Twitter account is my biggest way I've been getting this out there. I think it's Misty_Griffin. Just go to the bottom of the petition and there's links to my Facebook and my Twitter account. If you can really get it out on Twitter, that's really been getting the signature. So if you can just share my pinned post on Twitter or X, if you have that, that would help so much in getting this message out there.
Great. Well, thank you again. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know in the comments if you made it to the end. You guys are the real MVPs, and let us know if you signed the petition. We really appreciate you. And if you like this video and you want to learn more about Misty, I will link her video down here below along with something else that you'd want to check out. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.